Well, good morning, everybody. How we doing? All right? It's good to see all of you here today. Today we are kicking off a brand new collection of talks that we're calling Love Like Jesus. And we're going to go on this journey together over these next 4 weeks as we're ramping up for Easter and learning how to love like Jesus. But before we jump into all of that, how many have a cell phone? Do you have a cell phone? Just go ahead and grab your cell phone. Go ahead, just hold it in your hand, this piece of technology. And I know we're in church, you're like, just make sure it's off. But I want you to have, if you got a cell phone, I want you to hold it in your hand. And how many can remember the first cell phone they've ever bought? Anybody remember your first, right? Some of you, some of you guys, like me, we were born all the way back in the 1900s. I know, right? I'm going to sound really old these next 4 minutes. But we didn't grow up with cell phones. So some of us, we remember the very first cell phone that we purchased. I remember, I brought a picture of the very first cell phone. My wife and I, we had bought it together. We had never had a cell phone. Where's the picture? Here it is. The first cell phone. Anybody remember these? This is before iPhone. This is before Android, Samsung. I mean, the market was basically Motorola. Remember Nokia, Nextel. They had that walkie-talkie phone, right? You remember I had one of those walkie-talkie phones? You didn't have to use cell minutes for it, right? You could just press a button and somebody else had the same cell phone. You could it's like walkie-talkie. It was awesome. But this was the first cell phone. I got this for Becca because I'd been hearing about these cell phones where you could make calls wirelessly. You weren't tethered by a cord to something hanging on the wall or sitting in your kitchen on the counter, right? It was actually wireless. And my wife was working as a social worker. This is 20-something years ago. And she was working with clients that had HIV and AIDS right here in Monroe County. She was the only social worker, providing resources and helping them get connected with what they needed. Again, this is 27 years ago. And and she was it's her first job. She was 14. And just how young we are. And I just knew, man, she's going to be driving all over the Poconos. And how many know there's some sketchy parts of the Poconos? I'm thinking, my young wife walking into some person's house that I don't know where they are and what's going to happen. So we got the cell phone and I had this bag. She kept it in a bag underneath her seat. And I'm like, honey, if you pull up into a sketchy house, just call me. All right? I'm at the office. Call me. And then if I don't hear back from you in 20 minutes, I'm calling the cops, all right? Just give me the address. So I just want her to be safe. So that was the first cell phone that we got. Then we upgraded to this one. Anybody remember this cell phone? This Nokia. Remember, weren't these the coolest little phones, man? And here's how high-tech these phones were. They didn't have an antenna. They were no antenna. You just keep it in your pocket. And if you got some of them big sausage fingers, they put these extra big buttons on them. And it was really easy to dial. And here's the cool thing about this phone. You would dial a number. You're not going to believe this. This is how advanced the technology was. You would dial the number. The phone would ring. Somebody on the other line, trust me, I'm not lying to you. They would pick it up. They'd answer the phone. And then get this, I'm not lying. On your phone, you would actually have a conversation with you'd talk, literally, I know we don't do that anymore, but you would literally talk to one. There's no text, there's no email. This was revolutionary. I love that little Nokia phone. And then boy, I love this next one I got. It was that Motorola Razr phone. Anybody? This was a flip phone, baby. I mean, I just felt I was like Don Johnson, Miami Vice, flip it up. And this technology, this had a retractable antenna. I mean, and look at the screen. Look at the size of the screen. It was a ½ inch by ½ inch, and it was color LCD display. I'm telling you, you could actually put your contacts, one letter at a time and save them with a number, So I loved that little phone, man. That was a beast. And but then there was a game changer in the technology when I didn't own this phone, but this next phone, it came out. Anybody remember the BlackBerry? Where are you at? Raise your hand if you had a BlackBerry. Now here, raise both your hands. I want to see if you still have both your thumbs. I mean, this phone was so popular, and it changed the game because it connected your phone wirelessly to this little new invention called email. So you could actually send an email wirelessly from your BlackBerry. People loved it. They became addicted. So addicted that, you remember what they called the BlackBerry? Crackberry. That's what they call it. It's where people would just sit and they're like, people's thumbs are falling off because, every word, there's no AI technology. You had to type every single letter, one letter at a time. Think about that, sending an email, with that kind of technology. But then there was a massive cultural shift in technology that literally revolutionized our world when this phone came out. I didn't get the generation 1, first one, but this was the iPhone 2. How many had one of the early iPhone 1 or 2s, right? Mine was the first iPhone 2. And do you know some of these iPhones 1 and 2, you know how much they sell for today? $100,000. Some of you are like going to go back to your house, start digging through drawers and boxes. That's what these things are worth. Now, they're collector items. People spend big money, but this changed everything because not only was there a phone on this iPhone, but you had all your music in your pocket. They had this thing. There was a clock. You could tell what time it was. There was a calendar. Listen to me. I know some of you don't even know what I'm talking about. This was revolutionary. We had a clock. We had a calendar. You could send and receive emails. And then texting came out. And then, listen to this. They put a camera on your phone. I mean, for years, I would lug around VHS camcorders and little mini 8. You guys remember that? And then all of a sudden, it was right here on your phone. And now you just think about your phone and how it's revolutionized your life. How many of you're like me? Like the thought of you losing this sucker, right? Like, doesn't it scare you half to death? Like, oh my God, if I ever lost this thing, I don't know what I would do. I mean, if I lost it, I would literally be lost because I have no sense of direction. I use Google Maps almost every single day of my life just to get from the kitchen to the bathroom. I'm telling you, I rely on, everything I do in my life is on here. My contacts, my calendar, my email, how I text my friends and how I text you. I make investments on my phone, my crypto account, my Fidelity account's on my phone. I buy things almost every day from Amazon. My goal in life is to never walk into a store again. I mean, it's my whole life. I listen to podcasts. This revolutionized everything, how we do business, how we educate the next generation. It's revolutionized how people fall in love, how we experience entertainment. This piece of technology, here's the deal about this piece of technology. Do you know that there's more computing power in your cell phone today that was on the spaceship Apollo 11 that took the first man to the moon? And now you walk around with it in your pocket. It revolutionized our world. But can I just tell you this? As big of cultural shift and revolution that this has made in our world, it pales in comparison to the revolution that Jesus Christ started 2,000 years ago. I want to talk to you about that revolution today because when Jesus showed up 2,000 years ago, it changed everything in our world. It literally, when he showed up 2,000 years ago, stripped himself of the glory and the majesty of heaven. Literally, in technology terms, he dumbed himself down. He became one of us, God with skin on. Why? So that we could understand what God is really like. How he talked, how he interacted with people, the types of people that he loved and who he hung out with, and how he showed and unleashed compassion and mercy. He came so that we could understand what our Father in heaven is really like. And it's so revolutionized our world, it literally split history in two, between BC and AD, before Christ, and Anno Domini, after his resurrection. Now, I know some of you in school today, you won't see BC anymore, do you? What do you see? BCE. You know what that stands for? Before the Common Era. They're trying to literally write Christ out of history. But can I just tell you, they're not going to do it. Because he so revolutionized our world. It turned it upside down. There's no way you can take Christ out of history. You know, today is what? March 3rd, 2024. Every time you write a date on a check, if you still write checks, every time you write a date on a form that you fill out online, and you write March 3rd, 2024. 2024 what? What is it referencing? 2024 years ago when Jesus changed the world, revolutionized, come on, turned our world upside down. You can't write Christ out of history. What he did was change everything. And I think the scripture, I think that's so familiar to most of us, help us understand what Jesus really came to do. It says this in John 3:16, for God so loved the world. Why did he come? Because he loved the world. Not just he loved you. He loved you. He loved you. For God so loved you, the world, that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Here's why he came. For he did not come to send his Son into the world to condemn the world, to rub your nose in your sin and your mistakes and your failures. That's not why he came, to hold you down and push you down and make you feel guilty and ashamed for the things that you've done in your past. No, that's not why he came, to condemn you. He came to save the world through him. Man, aren't you thankful we have a God, come on, who lifts us up when this world tries to tear us down? That's why he came. For God so loved, he was compelled by love. And this kind of love, this prevailing love, it helps me understand that when Jesus came, he came to start a revolution, not a religion. You need to hear me on this. Some of you really religious people, I want you to lean in and listen to me, and don't just get up and walk out, but hear me to the end. Jesus, he came to start a revolution, not another religion, and here's why. Because when Jesus came 2,000 years ago, he knew, and everyone else that was alive knew, there was already enough religion in the world. He didn't come to start another religion. He didn't walk out and say, hey, here's the deal. I've come to start a new religion, and we're going to call it Christianity. No, that's not what he said. He never even used the word Christian or Christianity. That wasn't used until 60 years after he ascended back into heaven, after he rose from the dead. And when it was first used in the Greek city of Antioch, there was a bunch of new people that became followers of Jesus, and they were just trying to love like Jesus and live like Jesus, and other people were ridiculing them and mocking them. And you know what they called them? Christians. It was a derogatory term. Here's what Christian means: little Christ. They would see these people trying to live and love like Jesus, and then, look at these little Christs, trying to act like Jesus, trying to love like Jesus, these little Christs, these little Christians. Look at them. What will they ever do in this world? It's not like Jesus came to start another religion. He came to start a revolution. He never said, I'm going to start a new religion, and my manifesto is going to be the Holy Bible. And I've got a great logo. It's a great brand called the Cross, which at the time, it was the symbol of the Romans for death and torture and execution. It was also the most hated, despised symbol of the Jewish people that even said, cursed is the man that's hung on the cross or the tree. He didn't come to start a new religion. It's not what Jesus was about. He came to start a revolution, and it was a revolution of love. For God so loved. You know, one day this jet set, hot shot, super smart, walking around in his $3,000 Armani three-piece suit with his $2,000 wingtips on, little handkerchief in his pocket, hair slicked back. And he walks up to Jesus, and he's smart. I mean, he knows the law. He studied it since he was a little boy. He memorized the law. He knew it inside and out, front to back to front. And he goes to Jesus. Hey, Jesus, could you break down everything you're about? What is this all about? What is your teaching? Jesus was a first century rabbi. The teaching, this teaching of Jesus, of any rabbi, was known as their yoke. A rabbi's yoke was their worldview. It's how they viewed the world. It's how they would inspire their followers to live their life. It was their values. And he's like, what is your teaching? Like, what are you all about? Could you summarize it? Could you break it down? Could you kind of just give me the cliff notes? Can you make it short and sweet that I can put it in my phone and, do you say exit now? Tweet it? I don't even know anymore. Anyway, can I print it on a t-shirt? Can I put it on a bumper sticker? What are you all about, Jesus? And here's what Jesus said to him, talking about this revolution, not a religion. He said this in Matthew 22. Jesus replied, here it is. You want to hear it? Want me to break it down for you? I can do that. No problem. Love the Lord your God, not with a part of your heart, not with a piece of your heart, not when it's easy, not with a compartmentalized love. I want you to love the Lord your God with all of your heart. Like, I want you to give everything that you've got to loving God. Love him with your whole heart, your soul, and your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second one is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. And all the law and the prophets, they hang on these two commandments, the Great Commission and the Great Commandment. It was a revolution of love, loving God and loving others. He came to start a revolution of love, not a religion. Look, from everything that I've been reading for the past few months, really the past 4 to 6 months, about 2024, from theologians to historians, to political pundits, to cultural architects, here's what they're all saying. 2024, it's going to be rough. I know we're just on the third month. We're almost done with the first quarter. But they're all saying it's going to be rough. And here's why. I mean, number one, in case you've been living under a rock, every 4 years in our country, we have this little thing called a presidential election. We are now full swing into this election cycle. And I want you to know what this world is going to do, what the media outlets are going to do. They're going to throw everything that they have to divide us, to cause chaos, to cause conflict between Republican and Democrat and white and black, rich and poor, immigrant, citizen. I mean, that's what we're looking at over these next 6 months, gang. You know, there's problems at the border. There's problems involving inflation. There's 2 world wars there's 2 wars happening in our world right now, one in Europe, Russia and Ukraine, and one in the Middle East, and Hamas and Israel. And I just want you to know, over these next few months leading up to November, this world is going to do everything it can do to divide us. I mean, can I just say this as your pastor now for 21 years? This is our 5th, I think, presidential election. And I'm just so stinking proud that Beck and I get to lead a church that is not only multi-generational, but it's also multicultural. And for every single election, we have not allowed the devil to get in and divide and cause strife and conflict in this church. The way that we love God and the way that we love each other, we're not going to let him do that. We haven't let him do it in the past, and we're not going to let him do it this year either. You know why? Because all of us understand we're proud to, we love our country and we love, but our allegiance is a much higher allegiance. See, my citizenship is not just as a United States of an American here, but my citizenship is literally out of this world, that we belong, come on, to the kingdom of God. We're just aliens here. We are foreigners here on earth. Our citizenship is in heaven, and my hope is not who sits behind the Oval Desk. My hope is who is not in Congress and who's in the Senate and who's on the Supreme Court. My hope is in the one who rests his foot on the earth as a footstool. My hope is in God. And my allegiance is first and foremost to him. And gang, he doesn't have a democracy. This is a theocracy. Jesus is not our prime minister, and he's not our president. He is our King of kings and Lord of lords, and he deserves our total allegiance. So can I just say this as your pastor? I'm so proud of you. And as we're moving into this season, because I want you to know, good news does not sell newspapers. It's bad news that does. And they use that, not only to line their pockets, but to divide us. And we're just not going to allow that to happen. Come on, not in our house. Not in our house. So can I just say, as we're going up to this election year, and I want you to tell all your friends, because I don't care whether you're Republican or you're a Democrat. Personally, I'm a registered independent. Here's my advice to everyone who ever steps into a voting booth. Know your word. Know the values of the kingdom of God. They reign and rule supreme over any earthly kingdom. So know your word. And know the values and the character and integrity of the God that we serve. And when you walk into that booth, you vote the values of the kingdom. Not what's going to personally benefit you. No, what is going to bring honor and glory to your God and your King. Does that sound fair enough? And so listen, I'm glad we have a church full of Republicans and Democrats and independents, but my heart is so much, like there's more at stake than that. We're living not for who wins the election, we're living in light of eternity, where eternal souls hang in the balance. So that's what this church is all about. So can I just tell you, I want you to tell all your friends, when it comes down to it, this election, we get into this fall, you can leave all your bumper stickers on your car and all your hats and all your buttons and all your pamphlets and leave it in the car. Don't bring it in here. Because we have higher, more important business to take care of. And that's okay if you don't agree with me. That's all right. I love you anyway. Just don't bring it in here. There's a lot of different ways to do church, but there's only one way to do it here. And that's the way that God is leading us in our leadership to do it here. And it's worked pretty well for 21 years. I think it's going to keep working pretty well. Because we make God number one. Amen? Whew, Pastor getting political. No, he's not. We're just talking about house rules, right? We're just talking about how we love Jesus and get along. Because we can't let the enemy do that. Because here's the deal. There's so much hurt and pain, strife in this world. I mean, just open up your news feed. You just scroll. It's just like one bad story after another. And sometimes you just think, that's all you see, right? But what would happen, imagine, if this spring, leading up to Easter, people in the Poconos lifted up their eyes every day, and all they could see is love. You loving God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind. You loving your neighbor as yourself. You not living your life to make a point and to be right, but you living your life motivated to be the hands and the feet of Jesus right here in your community. What would happen? Could you imagine if we would unleash a revolution of love, the likes of which the Poconos have never seen before from a local church? What if we learned to love like Jesus? Can I just share 3 thoughts on what it means to love like, how to love like Jesus? And if you're taking notes, grab your phone, take some notes. If you're not taking notes, please just pretend to take some notes. It'll make me feel a lot better about what's going on up here. And maybe you just want to take some screenshots and maybe watch us back later on demand. Let me just 3 thoughts on how to love like Jesus. Number 1, Jesus, he reaches the unreachable. That's what he did. You read the Gospels, it's undeniable, it's unmissable. I mean, when he was a first century rabbi, like any other first century rabbi, he was building a team of followers, his disciples, which literally means follower or learner. And they would go and they would personally recruit people to come and to follow him. But Jesus did it differently. While all the other rabbis were going to the best theological universities, the upper echelon of academia, and they were choosing the students getting ready to graduate with the top of the class and straight A's, and they were the cream of the crop. Not Jesus. He wasn't walking down the hollowed halls of academia. You know where he found most of his followers? On a fishing wharf. Guys with dirt under their fingernails that didn't make the cut to go to rabbinical school. Guys that were misfits and outcasts. Women that had questionable pasts and were involved in things that would make your mother blush. He even went to an IRS governmental office. I mean, talk about the lowest of the low. He shows up at the IRS and he meets this guy named Matt. Look at it. It says this, one of his followers, he's recruiting him. As Jesus went from there, he saw a man named Matthew. Where was he sitting? At his IRS desk, the tax collector. He's the tax man. Can I just tell you, the tax collectors were, they were so bad and so hated by all the other Jews that even the sinners didn't want to be associated with the tax collector. They're like, look, bro, I'm bad. I've done some shady stuff in my life, but at least I'm not as bad as the tax collector. Tax collectors were the most notorious sinners. They were hired by the Roman government as Jewish operatives to collect the tax from the Jewish people that would go back to Rome and fuel the empire. And they had a lot of leeway. The Roman government would allow the tax collector to indiscriminately charge as much as they wanted to charge for the tax, as long as they met the threshold for Rome. Anything over that they could collect, they'd line it for with their own pockets. So they were literally bilking people out of, just all kinds of money. They were artificially inflating the tax prices to become rich. And so they were hated by other Jews. And it's this guy that Jesus says, hey, follow me. I want you to be on my team. I want you to be my disciple. I want you to be my follower. I want you to live the kind of life that I'm living. I want to teach you. I want to include you. I want to reach you. See, Jesus' love, it reaches the unreachable. He says, get up. It says, he told him this in Matthew. He got up and he followed him. And Matt's like, hey, where are we going? What are we going to do? And Jesus is like, Matthew, we're going to your house. And we're going to have dinner. And it goes on and it says this, while Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, here's what we're doing. You got the biggest house in town because you've been stealing from all these people. I mean, you got this palatial suite. You got lots of money, so guess what? We're having dinner at your house. You're throwing a huge party, Matthew, and I want you to invite all your sinner friends. Here's what he says. We're having dinner at Matthew's house. How many? Many tax collectors and sinners came. They sat at the same table with Jesus. They ate with him and his disciples. This is just bananas. This is unheard of. No Jewish rabbi would ever touch this group of people with a 10-foot pole. These were the people that they avoided, not embraced. They avoided, not included. But Jesus, he reaches the unreachable. Some of the Pharisees, now the Pharisees, they were the religious power brokers. They were the ones holding on to the power that they had over the people. They would take the word of God, the law, and they would enforce the law and religious ritual and regulations and rules on people, and they would force them to keep those laws that they themselves couldn't even keep. They would weigh them down with all these heavy burdens of all these rules and empty religious rituals. And they were exhausted. That's why Jesus said, hey, come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden, and I'll give you rest. For my yoke, my teaching, my worldview is easy, and my burden is light. Well, they didn't like what he was doing. They saw it. Instead of going to the universities to gather his initial followers, he's hanging out with all these sinners and tax collectors. Look what happens. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, hey, why does your teacher eat with the tax collectors and the sinners? Like, what is the deal? What's going on? These are the ones we're trying to cast out, and you're including them, you're bringing them in. What is the deal? And he goes on, and he says this. On hearing this, Jesus said, here's his response to it. It's not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. So go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. What manner? I mean, who loves like this? Jesus. I haven't come for those that got it all together. I've come for those that are falling all apart. I haven't come just for the insider. I've come for the outsider. The one that has been pushed to periphery, the one that has been forgotten and abandoned, the one that is lonely, the one that is lost, the one that is hurting, the one that is broke, the one that tore up from the floor up. That's why I'm here. I'm not here for the healthy. They don't need a doctor. Come on, he is the great divine physician. He was sent, come on, seek and to save that which is lost. He's not here for the healthy. He's here for the sick. You see, religion will tell you this. Hey, once you get yourself cleaned up, then you can go to church. Once you get your act together, once you can shine up yourself and, put on your best clothes, and at least everybody else, when they see you walk into church, like, oh, look at them, they're sharp, they must have it all together. That's religion. You know what Jesus said to the Pharisees who lived like that? He said, you clean the outside of the cup, but the inside is dirty, it's filthy. Like, you praise me with your lips so that you can get the applause of people, but he says, your hearts are so far from me. You focus on the outside. Jesus said, I'm focused on the inside. You want the best and the brightest. I want the ones that no one else wants. Here's what I've learned as a church. When you're a church, it's an outward-focused church that reaches the lost and the hurting and the broken and the ostracized. When you, as a church, you reach the people no other church wants, eventually every other church is going to want what you want, what you have. That's what happens. And so they're upset with this, and Jesus says, look, it's not the righteous, but it's the unrighteous that I've called. And he goes and he shops for his followers down at the fishing wharf and hotel lobbies, and every watering hole, down some dark alley. And here he finds Matthew, and he says to Matthew, come follow me, and I'll change you. I'll revolutionize your life. You know what they accused Jesus of doing? Because he did this so much, it wasn't like a one-off. You read the Gospels, and it's time after time after time. You know what they called him? They called him a wine bibber. You know what a wine bibber is? This was a derogatory term used to disparage the character and integrity of Jesus. They called him a wine bibber. You know what that means? Drunk. Think about it. They called Jesus a drunk. Why would they call Jesus a drunk? Because he was hanging around with a bunch of drunks. They didn't like it. Those are people you don't touch. Those are people you don't stay away. You stay away from those people. You don't try to reach out to them. I don't know, Jesus, no. I reach the unreachable. I've come for the sick. You know what they called Jesus too? A friend of sinners. Do you know why they called him a friend of sinners? Because he was a friend of sinners. Aren't you thankful? Come on, our Lord and Savior Jesus is a friend of sinners. Come on, you ought to give him some praise. Some of you saints, don't forget what you came from. How he saved you, picked you up, set your life upon a rock, and turned your life around. He was a friend of sinners, and while they used that to disparage him, he and his followers wore that as a badge of honor. Jesus was like no one else in human history. He reached the unreachable. He met people and he accepted them right where they were. And that includes the down and the outer and the up and the inner. He would show up in leper colonies and he would touch the untouchable. He brought dignity to people that had none. He embraced little kids and he highly valued and esteemed women. He chose as his inner circle raw, uneducated, angry, politically motivated, skeptical, and ordinary people. He got down in the dirt with a shame-filled people. He crossed racial divides and he tore down stupid stereotypes and barriers put up by culture to divide us. And at his dinner parties, you'd find prostitutes and sinners and cheaters and thieves and people with reputations and jocks and nerds and skeptics and sinners and doubters and agnostics and atheists all sitting at the same table because they've never been loved like Jesus. That's what it looks like to love like Jesus, to reach the unreachable. You see, religion tells me that I can't come to God until I clean myself up. But Jesus says, no, you come just as you are. That's why we say around here, it's okay not to be okay. But Jesus loves you so much, and his love is so powerful, he won't leave you that way. He'll change you. He'll transform you, and he will help you through his love to become more like him. You see, Jesus, he not only reaches the unreachable, but his love, he loves the unlovable. He loves the unlovable. God is a God of love who reaches out to those that need love. You know, religion, it paints this picture of God. And I don't know, maybe you grew up this way, whatever your background, religious or church history might be. It paints this picture of God like he's just some angry guy in the sky. He's like some old curmudgeon, that he's just so angry and he hates you. And he's just waiting for you just to screw up and step out of line so he could zap you with lightning and just to take you out. Because whatever you are, you know, it's not good enough. Friend, you know what that is? That's religion. That's not a revolution of love. You know, religion says, look at all the mistakes that you've made. How stupid could you have been? Not only you did it once, you did it 7, 8 times. How could God love somebody like you? In fact, religion says God doesn't love you. He hates you. God's not for you. He's against you. God is righteous. You're unrighteous. God is holy. You're unholy. Whatever God is, you're not. You're a hypocrite. How could God love like you? Friend, that's religion. And that is right from the pit of hell. Do not listen to the lies of religion. You want to know what God's really like? And you want to know how powerful his love really is and the types of people that he does really love? I won't take time to go through the whole story, but read it later this afternoon, John chapter 8. I just preached a whole message on this not too long ago. It's where Jesus, he meets this woman when she's at the bottom of her life. She had a really questionable past, and she was known to kind of sleep around other men that she wasn't married to. And these religious leaders, his ministry was skyrocketing, and they felt their power base eroding underneath their feet and slipping away to Jesus, and they were trying to hold on to power and control. And so they used this poor woman as a pawn in their scheme to trap Jesus. And they pull her out of this other man's bed. It was a total setup job. And they accuse her of adultery, and they're like so self-righteous and trying to uphold the law. But the guy she was with, he's nowhere to be seen. Where's the justice in that when the law required him to be judged too? This was a setup job. They were just using this woman. They throw her in the dirt in the town square, and they're all surrounding her as the Jewish law would have dictated that she would be stoned and executed along with the other adulterer. And now they're trying to trap Jesus because he's known for this compassion, the one that he heals the sick and he feeds and cares for the poor and he loves and he values women and children. And now they're like, we got him right where we want him. If he says stone her, he's going to lose all of his following and lose that reputation of being great and compassionate and merciful. But if he says don't uphold the law, he's going to blaspheme himself. We've got him right where we want him. This will be the end of Jesus. And Jesus, he looks at those religious leaders, and you know what he says to them? As they're holding those rocks ready to stone this poor woman. He says, you without sin, cast the first stone. You know when he says that, he wasn't saying, like, you cannot, he wasn't saying that you cannot enforce God's law and his commandments. He wasn't saying that you cannot judge people who have committed sexual sin. When he says, you without sin, throw the first stone, he wasn't saying that, you can't uphold God's law. He was just saying you can't uphold God's holy law without any conditions. What he was saying when he said, you without sin, cast the first stone, he was saying, listen, if you're going to judge others, you better first judge yourself to the same standard that you're going to hold somebody else to. He's saying that if you're going to judge somebody, you have to be willing to judge yourself accordingly. That there must be consistency. What you're going to expect of someone else, you have to expect it of yourself as well. And these guys were smart, and they realized what Jesus was doing. And they realized in their heart of hearts, they were all guilty as sin, just as guilty as her. And it says, one by one, they dropped their rocks and they walked away. And there's Jesus down in the dirt with this poor woman, tears and mud all over her face. Her hair's a mess. Maybe she grabbed a sheet when they pulled her out of the bed to somewhat cover up herself, all the dignity that whatever shred of it she had left. And then Jesus says to her, at this, those who had heard began to go away. You without sin, cast the first stone. They started to leave. The oldest one first, until it was only Jesus that was left with the woman standing there. Jesus straightened up and he asked her, woman, where are they? Where are those accusers? Has no one condemned you? She pulls her matted hair out of her face and she takes a look around. I mean, this woman thought she was going to lose her life. And they're all gone. And she says, there's no one here, sir. Then neither do I condemn you, Jesus declared. Go now and leave your life of sin. Jesus wasn't soft on sin. He was just hard on love. He loved people hard. In fact, he loved people without liability. He didn't care what his love cost him. You know what some of you have a problem with? You care, if I love that person, it might cost me. If I'm seen with this person, someone might think, hey, I'm approving of their certain behavior. And they might think it's the same of me. Some of you, listen, when you learn to live and to love without liability, it'll change your life. Like, I'll love you so much, I don't care what other people think about me. I love you, whether I agree with your lifestyle or not. I don't care what other people will say about me. I will love you because Jesus calls me to live a life of love. Radical, revolutionary love. And I want you to know, if your love doesn't cost you something, then it's not real love. Oh, you can call it love, but it's not real love. Because love always requires a price. Love always requires a sacrifice. What if we loved like Jesus? Think about the week that you had last week. If we hung out in the lobby after service, could you tell me about a time in your week, let's say the last month, that maybe you hung around with somebody that had a little bit of a questionable character? When's the last time you spent time with somebody that doesn't think like you or look like you or act like you or believe like you? Oh, come on. You know, people that were least like Jesus loved Jesus most. Let me say that again. People that were least like Jesus loved Jesus most. Who are the people in your life that are least like Jesus? That they know you and they know what you believe. They know your character. They know your integrity. Like, they know you so well. They know where you are right now. They saw you leave the driveway this morning, and they said, there he goes, going to church. He's going to be late. There she goes. She's going to church. They're looking out the window. Like, they know where you are. They know where you stand. But at the same time, man, they love you. Some of them would say you're their best friend. You know why? Because of the way you love them. How they hang out at your house and they come over for barbecues and you invite them for dinner and you show up at their kids' game and you cheer them on. And when their whole world falls apart, you walk across the street and you sit down and make a cup of coffee and say, hey, tell me all about it. And you don't try to fix them. And you don't try to change them. But you love them and you pray for them. And at the right moment when they ask you, whatever it is that you have, this peace, this joy, can you tell me more about it? And then you give them Jesus. That's what seriously, that works a whole lot better than standing on a street corner with a sign and a bullhorn and a microphone and telling people, turn or burn. Seriously, hey, you better turn to Jesus or you're going to hell. You know what most people are thinking in their head? Why don't you go to hell? Can I talk the truth? Can I? And dear Lord, forgive me for using it. I don't know. I've probably said worse. Go look at the tape. I'm just saying, what if we really loved people the way that Jesus loved people? Now, I'm not saying be stupid. You got a problem with alcohol, don't go hang out at bars. And guys, don't use this as an excuse to go to the club or the strip club. You don't belong there. Some of the women in our church, that's where they belong. Go in there and minister to them. Let those girls know, hey, there's a God who loves you. We're here for you. What do you need? How can we help you? What if you did that, ladies? I want to have my little Bible study. I want to have a prayer group, and I want to do this in small group, and I want to go deeper. Love God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. For those that you want to go deeper, once you get that figured out, come back and then let's talk. Let's love like Jesus. Let's reach the unreachable. Let's love the unlovable. And last of all, if we're going to love like Jesus, we need to forgive the unforgivable. I don't have time to go through this whole thing, but many of you remember the story as we're getting ready for Easter. When Jesus was crucified on Golgotha, the place called the Skull, Calvary, outside the city limits of the old city of David, because it was against Jewish law to have someone executed within the city limits. So here was this high point overlooking the city of David, Jerusalem, and that's where they performed the Roman executions. And Jesus, he was led there to carry up the cross, and he had been so badly beaten and his flesh torn in two, he couldn't even carry the cross. And there was a man, an African man named Simon from Cyrene. You know, of all the people I want to meet in heaven, that's Simon. That's one I'd like to meet. That was one strong dude. And he picked up that cross of Jesus and he helped Jesus carry it to the top of the hill. When he was there, he was crucified. He was executed, but not alone. He was executed that day between two other common criminals, one on his right and one on his left, that were hoisted up on this instrument of torture as well. That's why when you see that scene with 3 crosses, that's why there's 3, because it wasn't Jesus by himself. Here he was. We don't know why they were there. Whatever they did, it was obviously unforgivable. It cost them their life. You read history and theologians and people speculate. Was it rape? Was it theft? To a large degree, everybody has an opinion. All I can tell you is whatever they did was unforgivable. And one of the criminals, he looked at Jesus and he mocked him. Oh, you're the Son of God. You have all power. Why don't you call on God to rescue you? And he mocked Jesus. And the other criminal on the other side, he looks across and he yells out to him and he's like, bro, what are you doing? We deserve to be here. We're getting what we deserve. The crimes that we committed, this is payback. But this man, Jesus, he's done nothing to deserve this. This man, Jesus, has only loved people. He's committed no crime. And he looks to Jesus and he says, Jesus, will you remember me when you come into your kingdom? And Jesus, with what little strength and breath and words that he had left, he looked at that criminal and he said, I promise you, today you will be with me in paradise. And he forgives him. And then he looks out to the crowd who's mocking him, spitting, cursing him, gambling for what little pieces of clothes that were ripped off of him. And there he hung, bleeding, naked, dying. And he lifts his head to his Father and he says, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they are doing. How to love like that. To forgive the unforgivable. And I don't know, maybe somebody's hurt you, betrayed you, hung you out to dry. But if you're going to love like Jesus, you got to forgive like Jesus. To forgive them. The Bible says in Ephesians 4:32 that we are to forgive one another just as God in Christ has forgiven you. It's so much better than holding on to that hurt. I mean, what's your alternative? To become some bitter, angry woman or man? Gonna live your life alone because nobody likes to hang around angry, bitter people. Or you could forgive like Jesus. It's not fair. No, it's not fair. Never said it was fair. And by the way, if you want fair, you know what fair is? Fair is death. Fair is you get to die. For the wages of sin is death. That's what's fair. Is this too hard? Is this too strong? I hope not. Just trying to real talk. You know where fairness ended? Fairness ended in the Garden of Eden when our first parents sinned. Because when they sinned, everyone who came after them, which is you and me, were born into sin. For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. You unfair, that means death. But the good news is that Jesus forgives us our sins if we confess them. It's not fair. The good news is that the one who is innocent, he took the hit. He took the penalty when he went to the cross. The one who knew no sin became sin. Why? So that you and I could become the righteousness of God. It's not fair, but it's good. It's not fair, but it's good. So love like Jesus. Forgive like Jesus. Maybe you need that forgiveness in your own life today. I don't know what you've done or where you've been, or how groggy you might be from last night. And those 2 bottles of wine you took down, just so you could go to sleep. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what form of escape and how you're medicating your pain. But I do know this, there is a God in heaven who loves you so much, who wants to change you, forgive you, restore what the enemy has stolen from you, and give you life in all of its fullness. And all you need to do is to ask. Just call on him. Cry out to God. God, I'm just a sinner in need of salvation. and he will look upon you with eyes of grace and forgive you and restore you. And what if we unleash that kind of love this spring in our community? We'd have to lock the doors to keep the people out. You'd have to come really early just to get a seat. Because, gang, it's not how good I can preach that grows this church. It's how well you can love. My advice, love like Jesus. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, I just thank you for what you're doing in the closing moments of this time together. I thank you for your love. As you have your head bowed and your eyes closed, maybe today you need to call on Jesus, seek his grace and forgiveness. Yeah, you might have messed up, blown it big time, but he loves you. I mean, he really loves you. And all he's waiting for you is to call on his name. If that's you today, I want to lead you in a closing prayer. Would you just slip up your hand and say, Dave, I need that kind of love and that kind of grace. I see hands going up all over this place. Come on, hold them up. You need his love and his grace, his forgiveness today. Come on. Thank you, Jesus, for what you're doing. Praying he loves you, he loves you, he loves you, he loves you, he loves you. You can pray a prayer like this. And these words don't really matter as much as the faith in your heart. That's how we're saved. You could say, God, I need your love. I messed up and I've sinned and I'm sorry. I pray that you'll come into my heart and help me write a different story. I surrender my life to you. Give me your power and your spirit to love you back and to love other people. As we continue to pray, I look around this room and I see some of you faithful. It's on your backs this church is built, and the way you pray for and the way you serve around here, the way you give, the way you love, the way you invite, it's truly remarkable. And I want to pray for you today, Father. You know the heart of this church is to love you more and to love more people. The heart of this church isn't for a half-hearted commitment. You've called us to love you with our whole heart, to be fully surrendered, all in, withholding nothing from you. Like these people, Lord, they understand that their life does not belong to themselves, that they've been bought with the precious blood of Jesus Christ. And that's a high price. And I pray this spring and this Easter season, God, that you would empower them, maybe with even a refreshed, renewed, new sense of passion for you, oh God, to love you, to spend more time in your word, to crave more time in your presence, and to be intentional about building friendships and relationships with people that are hurting and broken and far from you, but they're close to us. And I pray, God, that you would help us. Help them find their way back to you. Thank you, Jesus, for what you're doing in our church and our family. Help us to love like you. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Amen.